Welcome to the All Things Circular podcast, your gateway to the circular economy. Hosted by industry experts Victoria Darcy and Rich Bolger. Every episode is proof that circularity isn't just good for the planet. It's a smart business decision. Our mission is simple: to empower, to inform, and to show you how to make the circular economy work for you.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the All Things Circular podcast. I'm Vic Darcy.
And I'm Peter Evans. Welcome.
So this is the first time Peter and I are actually tag team, and I'm excited about this. And we have a great guest, a fellow Brit. Here we are in Vegas with a fellow Brit. Dan Main from Bidpath. Thank you for joining us. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Yeah, thank you, Vic. Just to say I'm very excited as well to be doing this with you and Peter. And I'm a big fan of the podcast too. I've been listening to all the episodes so far, and I think it's a really great thing to have that feels like it's been missing from the podcast world. So yeah, I'm Dan Main. I work for Bidpath. I'm based out of the UK, but our headquarters are in California. And we are a provider of auction technology services. So as you'd expect, primarily to auctioneers, but also we work a lot with manufacturers, retailers, insurance companies as well. Anyone who has surplus that they want to find an efficient way to get it to market.
So can you explain a little bit about, I think most people are familiar how auctions run, but you also do auction software.
Yeah.
So help us understand, are these, how they connected, and what's the role of software in running auctions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, everyone, as you say, is probably familiar with it, and actually the range of clients that we have is, pretty wide. Anyone you can think sells something by an auction, be it from classic cars to pallets of surplus through to massive industrial equipment and even livestock. Those are all within our client roster. So we've got quite an interesting range of people within there. But yeah, that challenge I think that they're all sharing is having to get an item or groups of items efficiently and quickly to market regularly and getting to that point where you've got competitive bidding. The beauty of an auction, it is a date certain competitive bidding process. So everyone knows that on this day, the auction's going to close. You've got to get there for it, bid against each other. We're in Vegas. It is a little bit like gambling as well. We do see people going crazy and, trying to win an item. And so you see them getting some pretty significant values. What's core there as well from a software perspective is stability and latency as well. You have people bidding at the same time all around the world. Sometimes you'll have a live aspect as well, so you will have the auctioneer on a video taking bids, can just be online there still, can be in the room and online. You've got to make sure that everything is quick enough so that someone bidding over in Nebraska and someone bidding in China, that the system recognizes who got in there first, which can be important, and plus is offsetting against people in the room. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, I would say. There's lots of features as well that you have in the auction software because everyone wants to run their auction in a different way, so you give them different parameters that they need, and yeah, again, I think just having that flexibility for people to be able to do it in the way that they want, but not too much. You can be kind of overwhelming when there's lots of bells and whistles.
I think that's really interesting because perception sometimes about auctions is in the wrong place. People may think, well, that's the last stop, effectively, for the train, and it shouldn't be, and it isn't. It's a competitive weapon, really. To your point, you're saying, you can create this competition, this competitive edge for people that want to win. Do you find you have to adopt different strategies based on the vertical that you are representing?
Yeah, and even, different verticals have different approaches, different kind of things like volumes of bidders. You can have some items like construction equipment or cars where there are lots and lots of people who are going to come out and bid on those kind of items. You might have something else which could be a highly specialized piece of industrial equipment where there might only be 2 people in the world that are viable for that. So you've really got to try and consider the different angles there. We work with people as well who sometimes will be working with someone who's never run an auction before. And we're kind of having to get them to that point where they're first running an auction. There's kind of tips and techniques that we can suggest to kind of help them get up and running quicker than they might otherwise do so.
So on that point, there are different types of auctions. You can have reverse auctions, for example. So do you have software that has different types, and then you provide advice as to which is the best type of auction to run?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give some general rules, like quite often, and also the great thing is I'll give the rules and then someone will break them and there'll be some complete contradiction to what I've said. But certainly when someone's getting started, there's timed auctions and live webcast auctions tend to be the key differences you'll see. So someone's either going to have an auctioneer taking bids on the screen, or they're just going to do it in more of a kind of eBay format where you're just seeing the lots close.
Well, that's when you set a time and they send in their bids, and then you close it.
You do close it, yeah, although that's another point there is that if you ever seen anyone sniping on eBay, so getting in just before the auction closes, we have to prevent that. Any auction software has to have a feature to prevent that. So it's called auto extension. Okay. So any last minute bidding will automatically extend the lot slightly further. So it will ensure that everyone's
is that a policy that you auction platforms have to follow to stop that?
So they don't have to follow. It's definitely for the best in the sniping. Ultimately, if someone gets in with a snipe, you're probably not getting the level of value you could have achieved. So it's about getting the right value levels for the vendors. We have it in our system. It's kind of on as a standard. If you want to switch it off, you can do. We highly recommend that people keep it on because it does allow it to continue and continue. You do have some auctions that run, it feels like forever sometimes when there's one lot that people are really looking to get. But yeah, I think it's an important feature that anyone would need for their software.
Do you do KYC as well to ensure that the people who are bidding are actually known people?
So because our clients manage their own bidders, they have their own buyers within the system, we would provide them with tools to allow them to get the data in and out. So if they want to run it through a system that's kind of telling them anyone with any flags against it, plus within there we kind of have our own tools. So if someone has bid auction before, for example, and then not paid, you can flag them, you can cut them off, you can even
put them on a list.
You could even, in some extremes, you can stop their IP address from registering again. Although there was someone we knew who, the auctioneer, unfortunately blocked their own IP address. So had to unlock them from the system. So they can, it's a last resort thing. But yeah, I mean, the principle again, yeah, there's an awful lot of different ways to go about it. We'll always say to people when you're first doing your auctions, especially if it's B2B, what a lot of them are, close it on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday. I always say don't go for more of an event style auction than a marketplace. So rather than just having lots of items on your platform that are closing at different times, promote your February industrial assets auction or your tech.
Drive the people, drive your actual buyers to the event.
One day whether you've got 50, 100, 500 lots, send them to that one day because it's an easier way to promote it as an event to get people on that particular point where they're all bidding at the end.
See, this guy knows a lot about auction.
Well, he does, but also, I mean, auctions have been around quite a while. Well, I mean, Dan, tell us about the history and where the industry is actually going with auctions.
This is it. I mean, actually, the auction format goes back thousands of years. I think we trace it back to sometime BC when it's been used as just a transaction.
Bartering, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. And then even more recently, I mean, I think the first company that I worked for was a company called Henry Butcher, and they were founded, industrial auction business founded in the late 1800s by Mr. Henry Butcher, as you would expect. And then this whole long history is how it's grown through the decades, and around the Second World War in the UK became another method of both the appraisals for insurance damage from the war through to the sale of items from auction when places have closed. You can see newspaper articles going back decades talking about these auctions. And then right up to the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, which was about the time that Bidpath started, when auctions started going online, as you would expect, and people wanted to be able to get them to get to a wider audience.
So help us with the linkages between auctions as a methodology for resale and the circular economy. Are you seeing that as an interest? Do you use that as a way to pitch to customers? And tell us about that.
Well, we do now, certainly. It's one of these things where you've kind of been doing something for a while, and then you suddenly realize that, this is something that we're a part of.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. When you talk about circular economy, about keeping items in circulation, that is key to the auction process, and pretty much every auction is about taking a used item, be it from a factory closure right through to a work of art or a classic car.
Well, not necessarily used either, because surplus as well, right?
Yeah, this is it. Anything that is, precisely. And That's the interesting area as well, where something it's effectively fallen out of the normal supply chain when it gets ready to come to auction. There's nothing there that's suddenly not part of this natural process. And if you think about it, there's a huge amount of ways that can happen. And even I'm still discovering, new things. Only recently we started talking to a company who, when there's an insurance claim, so say there's been a fire in a factory and there's a huge warehouse full of stock, all of that stock tends to be written off, but in many cases it is perfectly serviceable. And historically that would have been just gone straight into landfill. And this can be, thousands of tons of stock here that again can be resold through an auction type process.
I think it's really interesting because, Dan and I work on some tactical things together just in our general day-to-day lives. And, when you find certain items, they can be tricky to place. And so there are strategies that you can employ to kind of help those get into the market. So, do you want to sort of tell our listeners about sort of some of the tactics that you can use if you do have a really tricky item that, has got a very small niche market?
Yeah, that's it. And you can have those situations, and the things that make it more difficult are when you've got high multiples of a single item, combined with limited market demand, and then potentially combined with technical obsolescence as well. You're going to struggle whatever you're trying to do with those, but when you're putting it through an auction, the danger is if you fire everything in one go, you might see a good price at the beginning, or you tend to see slightly lower and then a bit of a bump, and then you can watch it go right downhill. If there's just not enough buyers there, then you see it go down to potentially almost nothing
and
at all.
quantity as well, if you have a significant quantity.
This is it, yeah. When there's huge multiples, then it's always going to be difficult. We will try and do that through different ways. We'll try and stagger it into the market if we can combine with other things. So if the client has got surplus in another area, then we would recommend that they would put it together with these assets, the smaller volume, and they can test the market as well there. And you can still be running an e-commerce process alongside that if you want to try and get that peak price.
So it sounds like there's a bit of a consulting component to this where you're helping to strategize the best strategic option for them in given the range of auction techniques and methodologies. So how does that work in your business? Is this just a freebie and they pay for the auction? How does the advice component fit into this?
It's a great question. I suppose it depends. It's probably the answer to that. We've got a nice combination in the business that I work with here. And a little bit of the history is we started as an industrial auction company. So CA Global Partners back in the 1990s was going in and selling off assets around about the dot-com boom and bust time as well as some fascinating other projects like stadiums and things like that. And really, Bidpath came about because we were looking for a way to go online, to sell our assets online. So it really just started as our own platform initially. And then we had partners that we worked with who said, oh, you've got this platform, can we use that? And really, it just kind of grew and grew and grew from there to the point now we've got around 800 clients in 27 countries with the range that I've already described. The nice thing is, CA Global Partners, that business still exists. So we still have that option to kind of lean into that space and say, okay, look, we need a bit more operational support. Or as you say, it's the consultancy side of things. When we're taking someone who has never done an auction before in their lives, and genuinely we forget that people don't know how to do it. If we just kind of let them loose and say, okay, yeah, there's the system, go for it, then they'll make mistakes that we all kind of think are obvious. Like, which day you're going to close on, are you going to promote it as events, things like that. If you're selling something already, if someone's already selling pallets or truckloads, for example, and they want to move into auctions, I would say keep selling to who you're naturally selling to now. You've got those buyers, you've got that experience. Don't now start breaking down those items until you've got comfortable.
So it's an enhancement to, an existing strategy as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And
So you sell the software as a service. So do you also do a managed service where you would actually run the auction for them?
It can be, yeah. Some of our corporate clients will get a bit more involved with managing that system for them. The great thing is there's a lot of training and there's a lot of kind of facilitation, and we have account managers who will sit alongside people. Once you're up and running, it is relatively straightforward. The idea is for some of our clients, if you think that they were starting out with a spreadsheet, that they were emailing to multiple people and asking for offers. Moving into this bidding platform, life is always going to be easier than it was before. So at that point, they kind of find that often they don't need too much operational input.
And I would imagine the value you're extracting is higher when you systematize it.
Yeah, significantly so. Once you're building in that competitive bidding as well, and also even if you think when you send out spreadsheets, people make their offers, when people never win, they pull out of the process. Whereas when you've got an auction and each lot, however big that lot is getting bid on individually, people have always got a chance to go again. So it encourages the buyers being a part of that process and coming back. And we've seen clients scale massively. They've put this in place in one region, and then before you know it, it's gone all around the world because they recognize that this is a way of just moving items through their inventory much, much quicker than previously would have done.
Do you see cultural differences, behavioral differences in, Asia to Europe to the US?
Yeah, we do. I mean, interestingly, on the marketing side, so our clients, we will pass on to people who can assist them with the marketing. A lot of them already have an existing buyer base that they put into the platform. But we see differences. Facebook works great for marketing in the UK and Europe, whereas WhatsApp is actually really effective in Asia. So you do see these, and text messaging as well has actually come really positive in the US in particular. We see some auctioneers having really successful text campaigns, I guess because our emails are so full already. This is a way around that crowded space. And yeah, of course, different approaches as well from the auctioneer's side that we see, and obviously language can be a barrier there as well. So, and thankfully the system is flexible enough, and it is a custom system as well. So if there's any custom work required to someone's Bidpath platform, then we can talk to them and say, okay, anything we need to do. If they've got existing systems, we can integrate with those as APIs that come in and out.
Talk to us a little bit more about the customization. What do you actually see, customer A versus customer B, the differences needed in the behaviors?
Yeah, so I mean, the differences and the similarities are that any customer who takes on one of their platform, generally, it has to look like it's just another part of their website.
Okay.
So if they've got, acme.com, then their auction platform's going to either sit at auctions.acme.com or bid.acme, and it's going to be the same header and the same footer. And as far as the user's concerned, this is just another section of the same website. We're holding it on our servers, on our cloud servers, but you want the buyer experience to be just as though they're another part of this website. And for us, that's key because we're trying to support the brand of these companies. Well, we want it to be all about their brand rather than if they were on a more generic marketplace, kind of gets lost within everything else. There is an inevitable Shopify to Amazon comparison here. We're giving you your own white label platform that is going to just look like yours. It's got your buyers in it as well, so it's driving your relationship and how you're growing your business here. I think in terms of some of the other differences as well, we would see different settings for different clients. I mean, we have people selling classical instruments who are going to want, be putting reserves on items and making sure it's not going to sell for too little. We have others where they might be doing a facility clearance where they don't have the luxury of putting reserves on. It's just going to have to go out the door. So it's always a little bit of tailoring as they need it for like the different timings and processes as well.
So we're seeing a lot of technology innovation come into the circular economy. Can you talk a little bit about what you're excited about and what types of innovations are starting to reshape your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you would expect, the AI has got to come up in this.
Of course.
Is kind of finding its way into everything. There's various ways that we can look at that and incorporate that. And some of our clients, because we provide the data and the data can be taken out of the system, to some degree our clients can take that and do whatever they want in terms of analysis. Specifically for us, we have a relatively new product which is for cataloguing, essentially getting things into inventory, especially when you don't have an existing record of it. Our standard product in there was a simple case of taking photos and listing the details of an item, and then you've got it line by line that can go either into your inventory or into an auction. The new system we've got, you go up to something, you take the picture, you move on. and then you run the AI tool on that, and it identifies everything that's in the picture and describes it efficiently and effectively for an auction. So it goes into all the different parameters there and pulls it out. And it's one of those things where you kind of feel like you're going to be skeptical about it.
Until you see it.
When you see an action, it's incredible. Yeah.
So did your guys write that, or are you leveraging?
It's kind of a
Bitblend
sister company
model?
that we're involved with. It's kind of connected to our business as well. So it's so we're kind of a part of that too.
Well, I mean, people are so interested in how AI is enabling the circular economy. So that's a great example of how this actually is working in practice.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really useful and exciting tool. The one thing I would say though still is that there's still a human component here.
Oh.
And I think as people
Gotta
are
put the
finding,
human in the loop.
you do, yeah, this is it. So I think as people are finding with AI tools, there still has to be that bit of checking. You still have to get someone to look at it. It's much, much quicker than it previously was. But even so, let a human spend some time to check
Well, you
it.
don't want the mistakes. That's going to end up with customer satisfaction issues, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want that quality level to be there. And actually, the great thing is a tool like this allows you to suddenly massively improve the qualities of descriptions here. When you're processing an entire plant, for example, through an auction, you haven't a lot of time.
Talking about a physical factor.
I feel like a full facility, there could be thousands of items in there.
wow.
You've got to work through over multiple days. Auctions would be tens of millions on some occasion of asset value.
Yeah.
So new costs.
And those assets are disparate, all right? Because you've got the air conditioning unit and then you've got the surveillance
I
cameras.
see what you.
Yeah, all kinds of different things can be in there. You've got to hit those different markets. But the one thing that's consistent, you're short of time. So your description can be forced to be this kind of very short statement, whereas when you've got a tool that allows you to augment that, quality goes
This is interesting because AI could actually help you optimize the bundle. So
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
put the generator along with the cameras,
Yep.
or do you keep them separate? I guess people with a lot of experience in running auctions might have some insights there, but I bet the AI engines
It would
could
definitely
figure it out.
Yeah, it would be great to compare the data on those too, because you do get a feel for bundling as you're doing it. The approach you tend to take is by value. You try and hit a minimum
Oh, you put the
threshold.
lower end things together and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
high value
you
things
you
together.
don't want someone to have, because sometimes even if you try and keep the auction in a bit of a flow, you don't want someone to be going through and then having suddenly 100 items that are $10 each, and then back onto the 30, 40, $50,000 items.
Yep.
So you
Oh,
will
because
kind of shift
you're
them
getting
together.
different buyers wanting those assets. Right?
Yeah, you can see different groups kind of coming up at different stages of the auction, even in something that seems like a relatively consistent industry with assets that are fairly well aligned. You'll still see just
Totally
different
different.
people with different priorities, and we see now a lot more end users at auction than we used to.
Okay.
Even since around 2020, 2021, that went up because, of course, supply chain issues there.
Yep.
Suddenly people were looking to this used equipment market, whereas
That's on the sell side or the buy side or both?
this is on the sell side, it's generally end users have been fairly common. But on the buy side,
on
this
the
this
buy
is new.
side.
You used to have equipment dealers. Now a lot of the equipment dealers would look at an auction and say, "I've been priced out of that." And ironically, some equipment dealers start running their own
And
auctions.
that's because the end users are willing to pay a higher price.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's become, I mean, if you think historically, it was very hard. You think the procurement methods and the hoops you have to jump through, it's hard for you to go and buy at auction as an end user because, there's no payment terms. Payment terms are often 48 hours. something
Yeah.
Like that, so they've got to move pretty quickly on it. But recently, I think desperation, necessity, is the mother of invention. So it's forced them to look at auctions and say, okay, if I want this item, the lead time on this could be, around COVID, 12, 18 months on some items, or I can get
I
this
see.
now.
Yeah.
So this is the procurement team looking for product they couldn't find in like you said, these normal markets.
Yeah.
It's kind of here's an alternative. Let's go check this out. Interesting.
Yeah, this is it. And I think this is where it brings us round to, we see the new world of circular marketplaces.
Yep.
We're operating in similar worlds, but doing it with different language. And so I think a lot of those kind of processes and ways of getting the best value out of items definitely could benefit circular marketplaces. And although there are some auctioneers kind of crossing that already, I'd like to see more partnership between this kind of new world of circular marketplaces and the auction model. I think that's an area that's ripe to come together, especially if it's been listed through more of an e-commerce strategy
Yep.
on a marketplace. This is a way of, especially with bigger volume, moving it quickly through that process.
So are your customers independents that are wanting to run auctions, or are you finding them to be enterprises that are adding auctions as a new capability to unload surplus assets?
Yes to both. I
Oh,
would say.
really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you think we have Barrett Jackson at one end doing auctions, we have right down at the other end, little local mom and pop operation just running auctions, the full range of people within there. And then we have enterprise groups. So we've got Macy's, for example, have a platform with us.
Interesting.
We've got an insurance company that also runs sales. So yeah, it's a real wide range. And I think, again, as I said, at the smaller end, we see it as being a way of moving faster and processing more stock quicker. At the higher end of the enterprise sale, we see it as a way of, most consistently, this was a surprise, I've learned this coming through to the RLA year after year, but it's about them currently having a spreadsheet and email process and just making it a lot more efficient, probably through a private platform as well.
Yep.
Most of our enterprise clients are not listing publicly. They've just got a kind of invitation-only platform that people wouldn't see unless they've been briefed.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact it's on the domain because the branding is there and that's consistency, but it's also, it fosters that, the idea that it is coming from the brand, so the authenticity of
Yeah.
it.
That's true.
Definitely.
Which I
Do you
think
want to
is-
ask a myth?
I do. So, Dan, we ask all of our guests at some point in time to come in and bust a myth. So have you got something that you encountered that you think that's just not true?
I think, and we've kind of touched upon this already, but I think it's the idea that circular economy is a new thing. Like we said, we can go back hundreds of years. And actually, like in many other areas, this is just a way of managing, as we said, things that have fallen out of supply chains. So it can function in a really effective way to get things back into use. And if you think, we recognize things like circular design, everything with new products, but quite a lot can just be about, there's so many things that could be reused and could be resold that, for instance, going into landfill. And personally, I see auctions as a really effective way of doing that. If you give someone the chance to buy these items, then chances are there's someone out there who will take it on.
I agree with you. I think it's that one-to-many strategy. So you put it on one platform, but you reach so many potential buyers. And actually, it's a way of increasing your brand awareness as well.
Yeah, this is it. And I love as well, we see so many occasions here where brands are talking about taking back control of the secondary marketplace. This is an ideal way for them to do it because,
Well, what I'm learning from this and talking to you, and thanks very much, is a lot of the advocates and champions of the circular economy aren't really paying enough attention to auctions as a mechanism to scale the circular economy. So I think kind of the opportunity out there to help grow the circular economy. We know that things aren't getting back into markets for resale. This is a fantastic way to actually make that happen. So thanks very much for sharing.
Yeah, Dan, it's wonderful. Thank you very much for being on our podcast. So would you like to just tell our listeners how we find you? Where are you, your LinkedIn details, and anybody that's interested in, getting in touch with you to run an auction?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm all over LinkedIn fairly often, as many of us are now. And I managed to score my name. So linkedin.com/in Dan Main, you find me fairly easily. Bidpath.com as well is the website for the company. And if you reach out to me through either of those, we also have fairly regular networking events, which we've been doing in London, and actually we have one this afternoon.
In fact, let's talk quickly about the CSCN. Do you want to just tell our listeners about this collective of which you're one of the founders?
Yes, well, I can't claim to that, but so Deborah Dull founded it back in 2019. I've jumped on the bandwagon unashamedly. Back in 2019, she formed the Circular Supply Chain Network, which is really just about bringing people together in the world of circular supply chain. Again, relatively early back then, but since that time, it's grown and grown. There's a network all around the world of people, and it's free for people to join as well. We've been doing these events, so myself, Deborah Dull, and David Watson from RL People, RL Equity, who I know you know as well.
I do.
A few of them in London. We've started, initially it was just networking in the evenings, and then we've started doing some daytime events as well. We've got some fabulous speakers coming in as well with showing real genuine insights. There's practical case studies of what people have really made a difference with, which I think is important. And we have one later on this afternoon right here within the Rio, so yeah, looking forward to connecting to a few people there.
Well, if anybody asks me about auctions, I know exactly who to point them to now.
Oh, Dan, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. And I'm coming to the mixer.
There we go.
So I will see you this
Fantastic.
evening. Okay.
Look forward to it.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been All Things Circular coming to you from Las Vegas.
Yeah, and Peter Evans signing out, and thanks again, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. Please head over to allthingscircular.com to learn more.